being so intrigued with these Perdigon style flies, this thing is like right in keeping with uh, right in keeping with that kind of style of fly. So what I did was I started playing around with it, and I tied it to his specifications, which was pink rubber legs on a size 10 caddis or scud hook or whatever you want to call it. Pink bead. You create the tapered body with 3/0 thread. You go over it with glow floss, and then you coat the whole thing in UV. This thing is amazing. Like the other one, it really has little or no water resistance. You can fish this as your primary fly. Another thing I do not do is, and I tie a lot of loop knots on all my flies when I fish them, but with this one, you have the problem of possibly damaging your little rubber legs in front. So I just go with a straight clinch knot, works fine. This thing allows you to animate it. You can throw it out next to structure and just let it fall, and it moves and everything. You can walk the dog with it. You can strip it in. You can hop it. You can pop it over a piece of like structure and let it fall. And I hope the heck this works. If it's here, and it's gone. So too bad. You guys miss out. But it catches fish. And I was up protesting this thing this summer with my buddy. And we caught bass, largemouth bass. We caught crappies. We caught perch. We caught bluegill. We lost 2 to a pesky little northern that bit us off. And it's just a great fly. And he took it up to North Dakota, and he said he went 75 for 75 fishing for crappies with this thing. So he said, can you change it up a little bit? And I said, well, what do you want? He says, well, just come up with some different ideas. So what we came up with was brown rubber legs, a brown bead, and yellow floss for the body. This one is a bit of a screamer. And go try to find some yellow beads, I dare you. Yellow round rubber legs, yellow beads, and orange floss. This thing's a real screamer. And this one turned out really well. This stuff is, this is Vivus body quill for an underbody. I'm going to put this on the thing here so you can see it, because this is really neat. Switch that over. This thing is really cool. So this is where you can go with this stuff. Check this out. Okay. This is that body quill material. I don't know if you can see that Vivus body quill. Looks like that. Neat stuff. But check that out under there. That is just, that's awesome. Trick is, you got to find yellow beads. So what you do is you get ingenious and you get a piece of wood and you go get about a dozen toothpicks and you stick them in the wood, and you go get some brass beads and you stick them on the toothpick, and you get a pan of yellow spray paint and you just go to town, and there you go. So then you got yellow beads. I couldn't find them anywhere. I don't think anybody makes them.
Mark does.
I do, yeah, but it's a limited supply. I just do it for myself. So we are going to tie the traditional winter worm. So I will walk you through all the materials. The hook is very simple. Couple provisions that you need to make when you do this. Let me get this stuff out of the way. All right. So, medium pink round rubber legs. Very common, no big deal. However, what I do is I cut off what I refer to as a shit ton of legs. I take a chunk off, and it needs to be about 3 inches long. Okay, so you cut off a section, and ideally you want to find a flat section of this because this stuff comes all rolled up and it's a nuisance. So I cut off a whole strip at 3 inches. I strip off 2 of these and I leave them hooked together when I'm tying this. Okay, so these are my legs. You need some hooks, and I just happen to have some number 10 Orvis hooks, 1639. Excuse me. Getting over a cold. And for any of you who are paying attention, that's an old package. They don't make the package like that anymore. Or you can use an 1120 size 10. You can use a Tiemco. Where is it? I wrote all those down. Anyway, they're in there. So there's a lot of choices. You need some pink beads. Okay. Dazzle beads in pink. Now what's super important here is the size, okay? These are 5/32, okay? That's hugely important because the rubber legs fit in here just right. If it's too big, they're too loose. If it's too small, you can't get them in, okay? So 5/32 bead, you can do them in orange. You can do them in brass if you want. You can do them in brown. I have them in like a million different colors. So anyway, so I'm going to need a hook. I'm going to need some beads. And I'm going to need some thread. Okay, so it's really pretty simple to tie. There's not much to it. A couple little tricks that you need to be aware of. Other than that, you can knock these out pretty quickly. So this is what the fly looks like up close and personal. There you go. Let's see if it looks better that way. There you go. You can see it's pretty shiny, but again, not that hard to tie. So we need a hook, we need a bead. We put the bead on the hook. Everybody knows how to do that. But before we put the bead on the hook, what we got to do is we got to put the rubber legs in the bead. So, excuse me, couple ways you can do this. And this one is really tight. I'm going to grab a different one. This one looks a little better. Okay, so I've got my bead in my pliers. You can take a bobbin threader, which I did not bring, so let me go get one. Hold on. Okay, he's back. Okay. Nice to do this at home. You just go over and get all your stuff. Okay. So you run your bobbin threader. Can you see that at all? I guess you can. Through the bead from the front, the small hole. Get it in there. There you go. Then you take your rubber legs and you make sure you have two of them hooked together. Separate those and peel them off. Okay, and you've got your two legs. Get rid of that. I don't know if you're going to be able to see this or not. Maybe I should do it on the other one. You can see it easier. Okay. I got my bead in here. I got my threader in here. I stick my rubber legs, pull it through. I'm all set. Okay, very simple. So once you get that done, what you need to do is kind of center it. And then what you do is you determine where the small hole is on the bead. You grab the bead in your thumb and your index finger. You grab the rubber legs and pull them to the side like that and make them tight. So I have the beads sticking out. I have the rubber legs pulled in here. Now I can get my hook inside right here. Just run that through. And there you go. Okay, so now I'm going to put that in the vise and then we can start. Okay, now let me switch this over. All right, so what's important is to make sure that you have an equal amount of rubber leg in front as in the back. Now, when you tie enough of these, you can simply take one that you tied before, lay it up there, good. So the 3 inches gives me enough. The little secret that you use for this, to tie this up, the thread that I use, if you can see that, is Uni 3/0 in white. This is big fat thread. If you keep untwisting it, it lays nice and flat, does a nice smooth underbody. What I use for the top is what's called Glow Bright, and it's thread size floss. The color's number 10 for the yellow. It's very fluorescent. You'll see that as we get going. Okay, now this is a little piece baggy tie. Okay, it's just a little twist tie. That's all that is. So what I use that for, trying to start your thread on this rubber, it goes all over the place. It's really difficult. So what I like to do is I fold my rubber leg over like that, hold it, and then I just pinch a baggy tie on it. And all that does is just keeps it out of the way so that I can start my thread, okay? It's out of the way, I can go to town. I grab my thread,
Here's a bead.
Okay. And then again, what's important, touching wraps. And you're going to run down the shankaways. And about, excuse me, I'm starting to fade here. My cold's coming back. All right, once I get back up to the front with these touching wraps like this, and I usually like unspin this a couple times because this stuff really will get roped up. But what you'll get is just a nice flat underbody. Okay, now I can just pull this off. Okay, and now we're ready to crank that on. I usually prefer to have the rubber legs sort of facing me just a little bit because the torque of the thread will, you know, will turn it over to the top. And the first couple wraps I don't do super tight because what I want to do is just kind of get it where I need it. And the thread pressure will flatten this out. But what you want to do is control that rubber so it doesn't roll around on you, because this is basically the extent of the fly. Okay, we got to go down a little bit more. Where did we go? Down to there? A little bit more. Okay. Keep everything, and what's really important is your where you end, because if you end and it's off to the side, then those legs won't splay real nice behind. So now this is nothing more than an exercise of putting a crap load of thread on the top of this hook. And what's easier for me, I'm just going to jack this up one more notch because, okay, I flatten my thread. And once I get a smooth body going back and forth, then I will start alternating my start-stop points so that I create a smooth taper. So this one will go all the way up to the head, and you can see how that thread lays nice and flat. If you keep it flat, it almost just spreads right out like ribbon. All right, go all the way up to the front. Make sure that that is where that is and the beads are straight. Now, the next time I go down, I'm not going to go all the way to the end. Okay, I'm going to cut that a little bit short. So I'm going to come down to about the 2/3, well, probably the 3/4 spot, right? Like right there, and come back up. Make sure that you do touching wraps because you want this to stay smooth. This way you're not using and burning up all your floss. It will cost a fortune to do this in floss. Smooth that out. Okay, so next time down, about to there, come back up. It's starting to take shape a little bit. Get that smooth up there. Okay, flatten your thread. I go about halfway this time. About to there. Come back. Get that buried. Now, what I do sometimes is I end up spinning my bead just to make sure that I don't create a lip there. I want that to be smooth, and I also want my rubber legs to stay on top. Okay, so I'll flatten that out. And I'm just about where I need to be. I want to come back just a little bit here. Come forward. Come back. Oh, see how that ended up leaving a, don't want that. There we go. Okay, so, and all you need is like 1 or 2 whip finishes on this, because this is the underbody, you won't even see it. Okay. I always set that by pulling on it. lancet, get it out of the way. Okay, so now all we have left to do is put the floss on and then coat it with UV resin. So I haven't been looking in the camera. I guess that looks pretty good. I got a little bit of stuff going on down there.
You can't see it though, Mark, if you don't have it on the camera.
Can't see what?
You can't see the fuzzies.
Yeah, there you go.
Looking at it with
Right.
the camera.
I know. I know. Yeah, I mean, it's humbling how. There we go. That looks good. Okay. So now, need a little lozenge here and drink of water. Okay. Take your floss. Same thing applies. You got to keep flattening it so that it gives you a nice smooth taper. And I don't run a lot of tag on this because I don't think it's necessary, so I cut it off pretty quickly. Make sure. Now, if you flatten this too much, though, it'll fray. So it's a pretty fine line between going back and forth. And you try to do touching wraps. Give it a little twist. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. You don't want to do that too much to crush it. Good. Okay, flatten this out. Can you see how it just lays down after you smooth it out? It's just amazing what a difference that little technique does. Makes all the difference in the world in how your fly looks. And it's really not that much work. And actually, I think it probably just adds a little shine to it too. Okay. Now, if I don't have any gaping holes on the other side, which I don't, I am just going to tie this off. And then we can start putting goop on. So that didn't take too long. That's pretty easy. Great fly. You'll have fun with this. And really be creative, guys. I mean, don't just get all hung up on, you know, just following the pattern. I don't think I would try to tie this, though, with on a jig hook, because I don't think it would work. With the rubber legs, I think it would just be all over the place. So that wouldn't work out too well. So what I do here is the same thing I do with the other one, but I put it on a little bit more generously. So I'll just put a little dollop of UV glue on a piece of cardboard or whatever. I'm using old business cards, which makes me feel good. Now I'm going to turn this light up so I can see better. I'll turn it down. But this, and I know it's going to blow you guys out, but this will give me at least a little bit more vision. And I'm using bigger drops, as you can see, but it's important to get a nice even coating. And what you also want to do, you want to make sure that your resin seals that gap between
I'm fucking pissed.
the floss and the bead. And another thing you're going to find with this thin stuff is if you leave it in one spot too long, you end up with a hunchback nymph. It turns into a little Quasimodo there. And this is also important down here, making sure that you get this part sealed well. What I found where these flies failed after catching, and you know you have to catch a lot of fish for it to mess up, but we were out there smacking the crap out of these things, and you catch 25, 30 fish on this, they start putting a little hurt right here, okay, because that's where the hook is penetrated into the fish's jaw. and sometimes you're pulling it out there. So if you lose that resin, then the floss, which is very fragile, that's why you coat it in the first place, starts to fray, and then the floss changes color when it gets saturated under there, and then the fly starts to fail. So I'm going to make sure that's even. Okay, I'm going to give it a blast. You will love this thing. And there's so many different ways you can do this too. You can tie this up. I just showed you a few colors. You can try different body material. But this thing is just so electric with all this. And it's basically bulletproof. Simple, hydrodynamic. It gets right down. There's like 0 water resistance for this thing. Great
Mark?
fly. Yes, sir.
Do you ever add extra lead wraps to it?
I do not. The only thing I would do, Paul, differently would be, instead of using a brass bead, maybe go to a tungsten bead if I needed to, you know, to get it down. The same thing that I do with the Perdigon flies. You basically control your weight and the way the fly works by controlling the bead, because what it does is it keeps everything in context, you know. I mean, you're not changing the dynamics of the thing. And then just simply split your rubber legs, and you have got a fishing machine. There you go, the winter worm.